Hey everybody, this is Mike Raftery here at SCM Connections. Thanks for joining us today. We're going to get started in about 2 minutes because we've got quite a full agenda going on. But in the meantime, just make sure that everything works. Just for some logistics, if there's any issues with the audio or any questions, go ahead and use the chat feature or the questions feature in your GoToWebinar. That'll be the best way that we connect with everybody. Again, we'll get started in about 2 minutes here. Recording here. Pat, are you still there?
Yep. Can you hear me?
Great. Yeah, great. Well, welcome everybody. Thanks again for joining us. My name is Mike Raftery, and with me is Pat Green of SCM Connections. We're going to go ahead and get started here in a minute. Just while we're waiting, a couple of quick introductions. So if you are not familiar with us here at SCM Connections, we're an SAP partner and a leading system integrator for advanced planning applications like IBP and APO. Pat and I have been doing this for about 20 some years, give or take. And we really focus our firm's energy on how to implement not just supply chain solutions from a technical point of view, but also from an overall process point of view. And today we're going to be focusing on not just IBP and how it works and some demonstrations. We've got a couple of really special features for everybody today. First, we're going to go through the Spark package, as we call it. And Spark is an acronym for our accelerator. It's a partner qualified solution that was certified by SAP as best practices in supply chain management. And that allows us to do implementations as fast as 12 weeks. Which is a huge advantage, something that all of our customers love. We're also going to go and show you some brand new late-breaking functionality, some advanced analytic capabilities that Pat's been working on, and we're really excited about that because that, along with the Spark package, gives you something very unique from SCM Connections that you can't get anywhere else in the market, and really that we've never seen anybody else be able to put together. So we'll pat ourselves on the back and really excited to share that debut with you here at the end of the session. A couple of logistics. Like I had mentioned before, if you have any questions, go ahead and use the question feature in GoToMeeting, as well as the chat feature if you have any issues with the connectivity or any of the, the technology. We'll do our best to help. But with that, we'll go ahead and get started because we've got a lot to cover today. So just real quick, here's what we look like. We're not going to turn on webcams today. So we have these lovely headshots. Like I said, my name is Mike Raftery. I'm a partner and CEO here at SCM Connections. Been working in supply chain planning applications my entire career and specialized in network architecture and design and just have a real passion for supply chain solutions. And which brings me to the job I love, which is right here. So Pat, do you want to go ahead? Give a quick intro.
Sure. My background's not too dissimilar to Mike's. I've been doing supply chain planning for about 20 years now. Started in the pharmaceutical industry, and have been on many challenging projects in terms of managing your network, your supply network, and worked in all facets from demand through production, shop floor scheduling, and deployment, etc. Really like what I'm doing in terms of IBP and what it brings to the table. I'm very excited about the solution just because it kind of is the next level of integrating all the pieces of your supply chain together with financials, et cetera, kind of a one-stop shop solution. So been doing IBP for about 4.5-5 years, kind of back in the early days, as well as I was in APO in the early days. So happy. Thanks everyone for joining us today. Should be a pretty interesting session.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks. We had one question. Is this recording going to be available? Absolutely. We're going to email it out to all of the attendees and registrants, and it's all available as are all of our prior webinars on our YouTube channel. So go ahead and check that out if you haven't already. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. So today we're going to go into just a real brief overview of IBP, and then get into what does it do for demand and consensus, which is a real strength of this platform, as well as scenarios. And then we'll look at what does that mean once we've kind of seen the Excel-based part of the solution. We'll look at what the Spark package means, and specifically the interactive analytics, which is that brand new feature that I mentioned that we're super excited about. So I just have a couple quick slides Again, I like to breeze through these pretty quick because really the meat of it is what are we going to show you in the system, so I like doing that a lot more. But IBP itself, if you haven't seen it, is made up of multiple wedges. You have demand, inventory, sales and operations planning, demand-driven replenishment, or DDMRP, and response and supply. And today we're going to stay mostly in the supplies, sales and operations planning area, just to keep it simple. There's other webinars and other sessions on all of the other modules, but go ahead and just kind of keep that in mind as it's all part of the same platform. Some of the real highlights that we'll end up showing today is the scenario analysis and the flexible analytics. And that is really what drives the user experience to give you features and analysis for questions that you're asked on a regular basis, especially in this sort of changing dynamic environment that you just can't get from an Excel, which is ironically one of the biggest competitors to this. So what we'll do is we'll show you what's called a unified planning area. And the unique part that I want to highlight is that IBP allows you to look at the customer all the way to supplier in one database. So if you have customer data, which means you have pricing. If you have pricing data, it means you have revenue. If you combine the ability to project revenue along with costs in terms of transportation, production, inventory, carrying costs, everything up to like fuel spend you can model. Now you have the cost of your entire supply chain. From a constraint point of view, what allows you to show is profitability. And that's really the key to what we're going to show today, is not just can it happen, but should it happen. So when you're evaluating multiple options for feasibility, you really get to see what is the profitability of the business, not just feasibility. And that's a huge step to go from stage 2 to stage 3 Gartner maturity model, which is where everybody's trying to march up that curve. From the S&OP framework we're going to show today, I'll look just to kind of highlight it. We have a lot of inputs. We have demand inputs from multiple sources, financial inputs in terms of pricing, and supply inputs in terms of capacity. We'll run that through a consensus forecast, a capacity plan, and an inventory projection to give you service levels and financial analysis. Again, what we're trying to do is consolidate inputs from all over your supply chain into one harmonized view of the basically the state of where you're at, evaluate that in multiple options, and proceed with confidence, knowing it's a detailed, feasible plan. Again, that's really where this comes into, is showing you the confidence you need to truly make this work. From a planning horizon level, we're going to stay out of the response side and stay more in the operations. So everything I'm going to show here is basically at the weekly and monthly level, giving you that rough cut feasibility review that you'll look for. So that's that. I told you just be only a couple slides. So true to my word, let's dive into it. We're going to show some forecasting capabilities, consensus, supply, and reporting. So with that, let's get into some of the meat of it here. So just give me a second here to transition. Make sure my control panel is visible. There you go. Okay, like I said, if there's any questions or any concerns, go ahead and ask me in the chat feature, and Chris and Pat call one out if I don't see it in the control panel there. So for those that haven't seen it, this is your intro to IBP. And you might be thinking that looks like Excel, and you are very right. It is Excel. You can see if I scroll across the top menu bar, you can see all of the same Excel features that you have in your own version, which you might even have open right now. When you get IBP, you get this add-in. And one of the big advantages, especially for those that haven't been a part of the IBP platform before and are used to maybe some legacy SAP models or even some legacy platforms, is the lack of transaction codes. There's no transaction codes to memorize. There's no menu paths. There's no decision trees. You just really have these intuitive icons and the data across the top. Now, the data itself doesn't sit in Excel. It sits in a server that SAP hosts. And if I click refresh here, you can see it go ask the server for my data refresh, and it brings it back. What I'm showing you right here is the beginning of our process. And what we're looking at right now is a statistical forecast quantity. And what I've done is run a best fit model to provide the statistical forecast. And the reason I start there is because in the monthly S&OP process, generally you start with the demand signal and look towards feasibility of it. So the best fit model allows you to have multiple levels of both data analysis and forecastability. Right now, what I'm looking at to show you is a seasonal product. that you can review. Here's my actuals quantity. Oops, screwed up my scroll here. So the best fit forecast will look at your, in this case, I've set up to look at my actuals quantity that's been adjusted to maybe exclude promotions or one-time events. I mean, you could imagine how that in today's world, the massaging people are going to have to do with some actuals quantity is going to be pretty crazy. So this actuals quantity here comes in from any system. So IBP can integrate to ECC, for example, S4, of course, but it can also integrate to any platform you have. We've done AS400 integration, we've done Oracle integration, we've done, what else? Who knows, custom stuff. We have one that's a flat file integration. The client just creates flat files from a whole homegrown system and puts it on a shared drive and pick it up. So that's a huge advantage, and it's something that will become apparent as we march through this demo, is how you can actually incorporate signals from all over your databases. And I don't mean that in a bad way, but like companies just acquire data sources in different ways, and you can bring them in here. Right now I'm looking at my actuals quantity adjusted and my ex post forecast quantity. So I've run a best fit model. What that means is it's run and selected, I think I have 5 different forecast models to run through. It evaluated that forecast for the most efficient mate or percent error. And then what it's going to do is provide the best of those models for each combination I forecast here. So that takes a lot of the work off the planners and allows the model to do some of the heavy lifting. One thing I like to highlight is that right now I'm at the customer product level. However, you can very easily aggregate and disaggregate data. So one of the nice things here about IBP is that it allows for planners and any user for that matter to view data for whatever they're being requested. So for example, if instead of product customer level, I want to look for maybe family or subfamily, let's just look at subfamily level and see who's buying it. So for example, if you have different items that are maybe different colors and you don't really care about the color or the size or something like that, you just want to look at overall trends, I can easily aggregate that up. I can also aggregate time periods. So instead of week, I'm going to look at month. I'm going to look at month over the past couple of years. Okay. It also allows me to review things in this case, eaches. You can go any currency unit to measure. So let's go ahead and pull some currency key figures. Okay, I can actually pull some revenue in. What else? You can filter based on that. You can even do value-based filtering. So really the user has complete control over what they review. And because that data sits on a HANA server, the flexibility to give you basically anything you could do with a pivot table on demand shows up here in Excel, right? It's very light. All these files reside on the cloud, and there's really nothing to bog down the database. These servers are sort of best in class. I'm going to just kind of highlight one here to give you a graph. Oops. There you go. So you can see right now, I can see what customer I'm reviewing. You can see the actuals quantity by month, by subfamily. And you can see not just the quantity, but you can also see, I'm missing a sign, but you can see the actual revenue itself. So you can review things both in revenue quantity, make adjustments, and it will show you actually the forecasted quantity that comes out. So just like any model that you would expect, IBP provides for, you know, very solid, very dependable statistical forecast quantity. But as we know, that's not really the end of it. What I want to highlight here, and again, I mentioned that Spark package just comes with our pre-configured packages. This best fit functionality, statistical forecasting is included, so that's a huge win. What I want to show though is how you can integrate some data. So everything I'm working at here is in this Excel side. I'm a planner, I've got some input, and you know, I'm managing my data, you know, because I'm working with it every day. But what if I want to incorporate some field intelligence? So if I want to get some sales forecast quantity, if you have a sales team that works and they can enter in Excel, that's great. They can update this data anytime they want. However, one of the nice things is you can actually have a web-based interface manage this data as well. So for example, this is a web page. You can see here, this is my Chrome browser. picture me. And anybody can pull this up either on their phones or on a web device or a tablet or wherever the team has in the field. Of course, you can always integrate this with you know, a Salesforce or a CRM system or anything like that. However, if you want to do just a really quick user interface, somebody doesn't need Excel, they don't need the add-in. All they need to do is log into this web page, and let's say instead of 470, it's going to be 888. If they type that value in and drag it across, okay, and then save that data. Now this is somebody in the field just pulling up a web page to save some sales intelligence. I'm in the customer product level, but they could do it however they want. Let's see where I'm at here. Here's that 470, I think. Let's see what happens if I refresh, since I saved. One of these should be 888. I should have probably had it. There you go. Here it is, it's down here. So this is the product that I modified. You can see product 100. Oops, keep down here. And what it did was get that 888 number immediately into my sales forecast quantity. So without any fancy interfaces, without any expensive integration layers or other third-party platforms, you're able to take data from suppliers, from customers, from external suppliers even, or maybe a marketing team, and get them to collaborate with you very easily on the web. Okay, great feature. Now, one thing, and again, this all comes standard with that Spark package. Everything can be done here in about 12 weeks. Now, what that allows you to do is to build a consensus plan. Let me zoom out here to make it a little easier to read. I'm just going to change this real quick. So the consensus plan, you know, let's picture that you have different plans for different purposes. So in my little example, in my corner of the world, I have a global demand plan, which I developed for from a local demand planner, for example. I have my statistical forecast quantity, which we also covered. I show you my sales forecast quantity, so that's what I just modified, right? And then all of these, this is the part that really makes it powerful. Take this data in a unit view, so now I have my units and I have my revenue. So what it's doing is it's actually multiplying every individual element. Right now I'm at subfamily and month, but it's not doing any averages. It's actually taking each individual element of that subfamily for every forecastable element in that month, multiplying them by a price, which is also can change by week or by month, doing all of those many multiplication combinations, and then giving me my total quantity. So that gives me that revenue right away. There's no integration, there's no averaging, there's no discrepancy to say, well, my spreadsheet has this, well, my spreadsheet has that. The pricing is in here, the units are in here, the aggregation is consistent, and it's at the detail level, which means month over month, business unit over business unit, region over region even. All of those calculations are reliable and known. There's no more reconciling spreadsheets in an S&OP meeting, for example, which is a huge time suck. It also allows you to watch this data in real time. So if you're looking, right, at this bar graph across the top, you'll see I've got my global demand plan, my consensus demand plan, my sales and marketing forecast. And you can see where it diverges is maybe an area you want to have a discussion on. Why is there local intelligence that's diverging so much from our sales and marketing team? And right away, your eye is drawn, the information's all in one spot. You're not doing VLOOKUPs, you're not doing pivot tables, you're not doing reconciliation. And compare that to your AOP quantity and price and revenue to show profitability, opportunity quantities. Again, all of this data is in one point, allowing you to go and actually model basically the highest level here. So I'm at region or I'm at family, which is something you can set up in a project, is how you want your data to be aggregated or not. And then you can drill down to the lowest level of that and start finding, well, which subfamily, well, which customer, well, which region, and really work at any level, both high and low. Extremely powerful and a nice way to view a large amount of data from multiple sources all at once. So what we've shown here is the statistical forecasting capabilities, which we have other ones on the deep dive on that statistical forecasting method. It has everything, gosh, 25 different models, including some machine learning capabilities. Best fit modeling, so it'll actually pick automatically the lowest MAPE or the best fit. And then you have your consolidation process. We're looking for multiple demand signals, reconciling the consensus, and bringing a final number. Now, once we have that demand number, we can look towards the supply chain side. And again, this is all going to be within your, this is all going to be within that Spark package. So it's all going to be a part of what is provided in that 12-week window. So in this Spark package, what we've done is said, I have demands, which is then same thing, integrated from prior demand runs, prior consensus runs. It's going to say, what do I have for customer receipts, and do I have any shortfall? And you can see there's a couple of shortfalls here along the way. Now this sourcing model actually provides, and let me show you an example here. I think. All right. So this sourcing model gives you multiple points to model. So we're going to get demand from the customer level. You can model different sources between the customer and, say, a distribution center. You can map that distribution center to different plants, and you can have different plants turn on and off different resources. This is a manufacturing example I'm giving. You could do the same with external if you're, say, a distribution company. Now, because all of these sources give you a very different route, you can actually go in and model your supply chain in any way you like. So for example, my demand is at that customer product location. You can go ahead and down into the DC to customer and say, well, where am I shipping this from? Who's getting it from which DC? How am I modeling these lanes, okay? And you can see that for the most part, and just quickly from, reviewing your supply chain, let's look at this Midwest region. You're seeing right here, you're getting most of it from Detroit and some of it from Boston. Totally makes sense. Now, you can use these for projections, and you can use them to compare to estimates if, for example, you want to look for carrier capacity, or what can we put on rail, or where's our most expensive customer supply shipments coming from? Your demand gets mapped to your DC, which is in this location here, and then you can look at internal transportation as well. So it allows you, if you remember that diagram, from customer all the way to vendor, it's allowing you to review this data at each individual node and drill down on it. So for example, if you're shipping from, let's look for something expensive here. If I'm shipping from Philadelphia to Seattle, and you're saying, well, we don't really have anything on that lane, what's going on, what products are they? So you have a high level view, you're looking for exceptions. It's easy to come in and drill down to say, I'm going to filter on this attribute. I'm going to look for Philadelphia. Screen resolution is getting a little wonky there. There you go. And then we're going to add in product and see, well, what products are we shipping to the Seattle distribution center? And again, I'm just kind of spending a little bit of time here because what I'm trying to highlight is how you can get from high level data, look for issues in your supply chain. So I'm going to add product to my view. So it's location, ship from, and product. And I'm going to filter again down to location. We're going to look for the Seattle. So now I'm just looking at that one lane, and it took me maybe 15, 20 seconds or so. And now you can see, all right, well, what am I shipping there? Well, it's a product family 200, 210, and 300. Well, then you can get in there and saying, well, why is that? Is it because it's only produced there? Do I have more inventory there than I should? Do I have specific components that can only be made at that location, for example? So all of these elements, you can then start pulling threads, and that's really what you're looking for on the supply chain to understand where those issues are and how do we go and review them. Okay. So if we're looking, I'm going to skip ahead to the capacity side. If we're looking at the capacity now, you can model different scenarios. I'm going to go through one scenario real quick before we start digging into some of the analytics. So let's say, for example, one of my locations is going to go down for maintenance. So I'm going to come in here and say, turn off one of my resources here. So instead of supplying me with 12,000 units a week, there's 6 weeks that it has to go down for who knows what. The Olympics are in town. Let's go with that. So I'm living vicariously through my simulation because there's no Olympics. But let's say there's no plant because there's no Olympics. Right? I'm going to save it. And now I've got cancel actually. What I'm going to do is save it as a scenario. And as a scenario, what you're doing is creating a what if plan. So this could be my baseline plan. Somebody comes in and said, hey, we had a call, we have to shut down this plant because of the Olympics, what happens? Well, I'm gonna go ahead and create it and saying Olympic shutdown. And my description is 6 weeks off for the games at location 1310. So now my scenario is going to be a what if plan. There's not going to be, my baseline plan is still going. Everybody else is still planning alongside. This is sort of a side project that somebody's given me to solve. And without a copy, without a version, this is me as a planner now, just creating a scenario. And you can see it's actually added this column in here called Olympic shutdown. And you can see that there is no capacity. Now, let me kick that solve off, and then I'll show you how to evaluate it. So I'm actually going to run an optimization run in this case against, where's my Olympic shutdown for my base version for demo, and I'm going to run a constrained solve. So this is going to be an optimization run. So I'm not solving the baseline. Everybody's still working on their monthly S&OP process just as planned. However, I'm creating a scenario, which is, like I said, a save as if you're working in Excel, or a one-off sort of version of the plan that allows you to develop these answers to various questions that come up. Now, one thing I want to do as well is show you how to compare it. And this is, again, a really powerful attribute where I can take a scenario and I can say, well, what does it look like compared to my baseline scenario? And all I do is bring that in, and now every tab across my entire supply chain will show me side by side what those elements are. So it's going to show me each individual element of it. And you can see in my 13, right, I have my shutdown where there's no capacity, and I have my baseline where there is. Let's take a look at my thing, if it's still running. Still running. So while it's running, let me show you real quick some of the financial analysis. So everything from inventory projections you can do, but really what's interesting is how you can provide answers on your supply chain in real time. So for example, if I zoom this out here real quick, I've created elements, again, this is all part of that Spark package as well, that allow you, if you provide the data, to say, well, what am I spending in production? So by month, what am I spending in production? What's the overhead that I'm allocating? How much raw materials am I consuming? And what's my transportation? And right now it's still running, so those are identical numbers, but they'll be different when it comes back. And that's a really helpful element to provide, and Pat will show you some of how that goes in the analytics in a minute. But now you can really drill into what are the impacts of this plan. Remember I said it goes from what can we do to what should we do, and this gives you that insight into what should we do. So this is all your spend, right? How is it impacting us in our financials? You can also get to just, I called it finance. It's not high finance as you call it, but it's things like, let me zoom out here a bit. How much production are we doing in each quarter? What's our average per stock value? What's our constrained revenue? What's our profitability? Okay, and you can see my solve is finished. And because I shut down a line, it had to pre-build inventory. So what do you see here? You can see right away, my average stock value has increased. So I have an increased carrying cost due to that Olympic shortage or shutdown. I've also produced more here and less here. So I've produced more in Q4 and Q1 and produced less in Q2. If you go in the spend, it'll show you exactly what that means. I'm gonna refresh this here. There you go. So you can see right away your production overhead allocation is higher, your production costs are higher, but then it's lower here in this October timeframe. So you're really seeing every element. This isn't just, oh, we have to make more or buy more. It shows you not, and let's go back to our transportation view, right? It shows you all of the financial impact of that element. It shows you all of the, let me zoom out here. It shows you all of the logistics impact, okay? So do I have any shipments that I didn't have before? In this case, we have a couple shipment differences. Maybe we don't have any carrier capacity on that. This one's actually pretty, well, I think I gotta zoom out here in the future. This is actually pretty direct, so that's interesting. There's not much transportation. But let's see what happens on the inventory side. So if you're looking at inventory projections, you can actually graph them between two scenarios, and we'll talk about that here in a minute too. So I'm just going to do a quick graph here and show two scenarios. And I'm going to show my projected stock. And you can change some of this to say, what does that mean from, I'm just going to make them two line graphs, for example. And what does that mean over time, right? Where do you have that pre-build in here? And if you zoom in on it, you can see the blue line is higher in some of these weeks. I zoom in, which means your Olympic shutdown happens in those weeks. Again, you can see every element of that supply chain and how it goes up and down, not just operationally, but also financially in terms of what that does to your overall supply chain. So with that, I'm going to stop here just for some quick questions to see if there are any. One was asking about the presentation. Yeah, we're going to definitely have that presentation recorded, so no problem. The other question we had is, in what type of tables are the costs stored, or specifically what source are they gathered from? That was a good question, Tom. So what tables are costs stored in? So the costs themselves, and Pat, chime in from any of the projects you're working on, but generally it's the standard cost that you're getting. Again, you have complete flexibility on what that cost is as part of your project, because you're able to create those key figures from a time-dependent manner from whatever you do. So let's say, for example, your standard costs change from year to year. You can actually have that data come into your solution and show you, you know, in 2020 versus 2021, because that's a time-dependent element. That value will actually change the multiplication that happens in the year. So it can actually be based on a different calculation or different value week to week. Same thing for pricing. We've talked about some revenue. If you have different promotions or different pricing conditions, those can also be baked in to model your revenue at the same time.
Yeah, and that's been, you know, so what I've been seeing at most clients, you know, especially on the planning side, you don't need to be exact. You know, when you know, the precision is the enemy of good enough. But what you're really trying to do is make those kind of high-level decisions. Okay, what is my revenue projections or my cost projections, inventory holding, et cetera, if I make this planning decision, right? If I do a pre-build, or if I short my customer, or what is my revenue potentially cost. So when you look at those, what I've been seeing is mostly a standard sales price and then a standard cost or a customer pricing. And that tends to be static and then updates maybe quarterly. And that gives you a good enough, a pretty good rule of thumb to make better decisions with your supply chain. Now, some customers are going into much more level, a much higher level of detail in terms of driving that cost out. But just by and large, you know, this isn't a financial tool necessarily, so you don't see that level of detail here.
Oh, good question. So let's go ahead and look through this for a bit more, just for what that looks for, and we can come back to some of this here along the way as well. So I'll come back to my presentation. There we go. So we look through that, we look through our sales patterns. Again, this is the process that we'll put together, and this is sort of a high-level process of what that sort of predetermined, pre-configured package will give you. So you can look for statistical forecast models, run that, incorporate local intelligence. Then you can pass that into what's called a copy operator up to that consensus review process. which is what we collected there when I showed you the monthly review. You finalize it, pass it down to the supply chain plan that runs the optimizer and looks for the results. So that's a fairly common review of what's out there, and that should give you an idea of what to expect, at least from a standard S&OP process. So let's keep going here. And this is the network. So this is a network diagram as we depicted it. So we showed the customer, went to the DC, which were multiple sourcing options, and you saw those sourcing options change as I ran those different scenarios. So that was pretty interesting. And then there's also process management to develop that. So you can actually manage your flow and actually assign those tasks and watch them occur in real time. So what I want to highlight too is this is all, sort of part of this Spark package. And what we offer, it's an SAP qualified solution. So SAP has signed off that these solutions are best practices. It follows the cadence we just showed you. And when you do that with SCM Connections, you get the configuration, the templates, which we showed, training, and some reporting dashboards. So we offer 4 different packages. I showed you the sales and operations planning with a little bit of supply planning mixed in just for time savings. I was able to show you the some of the demand planning, but you can also get demand sensing and demand planning baked in as well. And then inventory optimization, which we did not talk about, but that includes sort of safety stock setting and risk mitigation to protect your service levels. So those are the 4 packages that we come up with. So here we go. One question we had: what features make our tool stand out from the competition? I'm so glad that you asked, Melissa. So Pat's going to show you some of that from a features point of view. We give you the best practices and a lot of different key figures that enable those best practices. For example, min and max settings, guardrails for inventory, and pre-configured templates that are best practices. But really, it's the process flows and the analytics that separate it from the competition. And we'll show that to you in just a few minutes here. The 12-week Spark deployment is for S&OP or other modules such as response and supply. The 12 weeks would be for S&OP. Response and supply, currently we do not offer it for order-based planning, but we do for optimization. And do the optimization, that one's a little bit longer, not a ton longer, I think somewhere 15 to 16 weeks. And that's generally because the optimization tuning takes a little longer. Inventory takes roughly the same as well. So again, it means that it kind of shorts the decision points. We're taking best practices we've done. Again, we have a lot of documentation, which we'll point you to in the email about what that includes in that configuration. But it's a known quantity, and it's the difference between something that is, say, off the rack versus, say, a custom suit. So we've seen insights, again, all level of financial data, simulations, demand and supply, best fit, really reducing those decision cycles. On our average, your decision cycle itself is reduced 25%. And it's a consistent product. I mean, it is what you see. What the real key is that it removes the project risk. It's a fixed cost, fixed duration, and fixed scope. So like I said, there's no worry on going down a rabbit hole of cost or a never-ending project. This is a known scope agreement that you'll get and a known deliverable on a timeline that you'll get as well. So as opposed to sort of meandering projects that you might have been used to in large ERP systems, this, again, partner qualified, I mean, SAP has signed off on the solution of it. It actually gives you that foundation, and you can build upon it. So you can actually add key figures and functionality along the way as well. So with that, Pat, do you want to show this is kind of the home run part of it too. This is an exclusive feature for Spark. Nobody else has this level of analytics or the flexibility for it. So Pat, while you're getting set up here, let me make you the presenter.
Okay.
We have one more question. Let me answer that real quick. Can cost information be sourced directly from S4 ECC, and can you enter it manually? That's from Tom. Yes, either one. You can either get it directly from S4 ECC, that's sort of the standard way to do it. But if your cost structures either are unreliable or you don't agree with them, or you just don't have access to it, then those costs can be managed or entered manually as well. Good question. So let me get you, Pat, you should be able to present here. I'm going to stop sharing. And if you want to start sharing, you can go into some detail on sort of these analytics that really separate out these solutions from the kind of standard issue, I would say.
Yeah, and Mike, I am,
wait, you're a panelist. Hold on. Now you're a presenter. There you go.
So yeah, okay, great. All right, so this kind of came out of as we've kind of built all of this out, it's really one of the things as we've been doing IBP for the past 5 or 6 years, is we've seen a huge step up in capabilities around managing your data, managing the process, all of these things. Excel's really easy to use. You can do all of these additional activities. You're not tied to the GUI around APO or any other external system. So there's really a huge step up. But one of the things we've kind of consistently gotten is the ability we're always taking the data out of IBP and then transforming it into another system, a business intelligence system of some sort, right? So, and then building a set of metrics and KPIs and dashboards and all of those things in BI or Tableau or one of the other visualization tool sets. So the great thing about IBP is that it's cloud-based, and getting the data out of IBP is really, it's all cloud-based, so APIs are available to kind of pull data out and then have it available in real time. And so what we've built for a client is, and we're going to be developing or delivering as part of the Spark package, is a set of prepackaged dashboards, analytics, et cetera, that all be based on Power BI and all real-time integration to summarize basically your S&OP package as well as your metrics around forecast accuracy, bias, et cetera, plan attainment, production attainment, supply attainment, customer service, all of those things kind of in a package that's easy to use and is in real time. So as you're going through, instead of going through the whole, we're going to have to load, extract from CPI, pull it into a database. Now, when you're doing these analytics and visualizations, we'll be able to do it real time, accessing data in IBP, presenting it in a way that makes sense for the executives, the S&OP meeting, as you're going through your supply review, and then you can have that data-rich visualization experience to kind of show the data in a way that makes sense for the users. So as I do that, what I'm going to show you, and what I'm going to show you now is the IBP, right? IBP Excel add-in, and if you kind of look, you've got charting capabilities, all that within IBP, right, within Excel. So if you look here, I'm showing you my consensus demand plan quantity across all of my customers, okay? So pretty simple data. But what I want to show you is when we pull it in, I'm bringing that data directly into Power BI real time, and then using the data to actually provide visualizations that are more meaningful and enriching to actually use within your whole process, your S&OP process, okay? So if you look at this, what I brought is all of my data around consensus demand plan quantity. So this is a replication of what's in IBP, and you can see I've got consensus demand plan by size. I can consolidate my consensus demand plan by quantity. I can drill down and then quickly see what my consensus demand is by product family, as well as my consensus demand by location. You have all the visualizations and all the tools available within Power BI, as well as some extensions that we're doing. But the key here is I can quickly go through and then use slicers to look at the data that's more valuable and more enriching, and then kind of use this as your baseline for your S&OP meetings, your demand review, supply review, inventory, et cetera. So now I'm taking the data out of IBP and then presenting it in a way that makes more sense. And I can do this quickly, and especially as part of the S&OP process, I can now see data in a way that makes more sense and then slice and dice in a way that my users want to see it. So in this case, as I walk through my in this case on the side here, I'm looking at my customers. I can go customer by customer and then see what their demand plan is, their consensus demand plan is by customer. See that very quickly, tab through each one, understand where they're hitting my product families, understand where this is. So in this case, they're hitting all my large, small, and XL product families, product sizes. I can then look to see the next client, what they're consuming from their overall forecast. In the top graph, I've got my 2 years in a time series, right? So there's my forecast in a time series. But here I'm looking at my overall forecast in general. And down here, I've sliced to look at it by year. So when I'm quickly seeing my volumes for target, consensus demand quantity for the next 2 years is 246K. 2020, I can have this rolling if I wanted, but for the remainder of 2020 is 75K, and for fiscal year 2021 is 105K. I can do the same thing for Walmart. I can do the same thing for Blue, Paul's Boutique, Planet Express, etc. And because this is Power BI, it's interactive, so it goes both ways. I can then say, okay, well, I want to look at everything that's in my large family and which customers are consuming it, and then where is it being consumed in my ribbon here. I can see what my overall consensus demand plan quantities are. I can do my slicing and dicing as need be. Okay. Very intuitive, very easy to use, gives a much more enriching experience for the user. Okay. So if I go to my statistical forecast, now what I've done is I'm not looking at my customer. I want to look at my slicer instead. I want to look at things by my products. In this case, I don't have that many products in here, but just to show you the capabilities, I can see sanitizer, what does that look like? I can then drill into it and see, okay, I'm selling sanitizer on a heat map down below that it's selling in both, LA and New York, right? For hand sanitizer, large and small. I can go to my, deep pull bar soap, find that that's a big hit on the west or on the East Coast, as well as my Irish Winter, kind of all through, et cetera, but just a much better capability from a slicing and dicing perspective. Additionally, a slicer I can do here, I'm looking at my time series. I can then just say, okay, I want to focus on the next quarter, drill down, and then I can see that has a slightly different view. Okay.
So I think one thing to point out too, Pat, is that this is all real-time integrated. So you're not talking about, overnight jobs or publishes of data. As you change data in that Excel side, this is updated.
Yep. So basically, when I hit refresh the data, when I hit refresh here, everything's refreshed, just like you are in an Excel. So it essentially acts like your Excel front end that you're using to do your entry. I would get the same data set here, okay? So finally, the last thing I'm going to show today is just the ability to now drill down into specifics around revenue. Again, so I looked at the revenues, we have quantities, now I can take another slice, and then from a process perspective, understand where my revenue is coming from. Again, I can use additional heat maps, things along those lines to go with different visualizations depending on your organization. But I can see here that most of my revenue for the next, in this case, 12 months is coming from my Midwest DC. I can then drill down to see that that's 105 or 100 million is coming from Walmart. And let's see, I can't quite read that, but there's another, some of my other customers are sharing, have just different revenue slices, right? So I can slice in and out and see how this reacts. I can view it by month. Again, I can see that coming out of my Midwest DC, my consensus demand revenue at this point is 13.8 million for March of this year, 2021. Okay. Again, I can slice and dice, and the entire visualization is updated automatically.
So, Pat, one question on this: are licenses required to use the Power BI desktop?
For Power BI desktop only, yes.
Okay.
That's the licensing, and then having us do it. Right, the installation cost. So what I want to show you here, though, is kind of quickly, if you look at Planet Express, right, I'm going to add my my consensus demand plan quantity, I'm going to take this up from 11,000 to, let's call it 25,000. I'm just going to keep it real simple just to show you the integration piece of it. Take that across. That didn't save. So now all of this disaggregates to all of the products that were within that product family at that customer level. So again, if I'm in an S&OP meeting, I don't want to go product by product, increase my forecast. I'm saying, like sales guys are saying, hey, we're going to sell 25 million across all product lines to Planet Express over the course of the next year, right? 25 million or 25,000 per month. Okay, I'm going to save the data. Ask me for a reason code. Again, I'm in IBP right now. I'm going to come back to Power BI. I'm going to refresh. It's going to connect. And now everything's updated. Okay? So if I come back to my consensus demand, come back to this. Now you can see that Planet Express is obviously the biggest. These are all gauged based on my consensus demand, and that's overtaken Walmart and Target as my primary customer. Again, this is all real time, and that was all it took. And I updated my entire database in my desktop Power BIs. Okay. So again, we're kind of working through putting together the package around the demand process for demand review, supply review, inventory review, and then putting together a pre-constructed set of metrics and KPIs that will be available within Power BI in the future. So that's kind of pretty interesting stuff. We find that this has been a gap in terms of the ability to do this quickly, easily, in a way that is visually appealing to the executives and kind of at that level. And this really provides a lot of value and a lot of flexibility in terms of how you view things. And additionally, within Power BI, you can add things like as you're creating your metrics, if there's something specifically, you can do it in Power BI rather than doing it directly in IBP and then using that side of the equation too. You can.
Yeah. So just to kind of highlight where this fits in, right, compared to the Excel side that we saw. Your planners, right, the people doing the work, the people, consolidating the data, everybody that's working the plan is working in that Excel side.
Right, exactly.
So the power of being able to aggregate, disaggregate, get into the details, do overrides, and collaborate, get all your data together.
Right.
This is the communication engine, right?
Yeah.
This allows you to take all that data and provide, your drumbeat. So you would bring this into a demand consensus review, or your monthly S&OP meeting, or a financials review. Anything these. So we're going to have sort of standard metrics to review, like Pat was saying, statistical forecasts will be one, inventory components for another, right? And those are offered as a standard package. So the combination of the two gives you the power of being able to manage a huge amount of data very efficiently. And then this side allows you to communicate large amounts of data very clearly and effectively. And the two combined are sort of a 1-2 punch for a planning software, that to be able to do this in, between 3 and 4 months, depending on the scope of it, that Pat and I, like I said, been doing this 20 years, that's unheard of, right? I mean, these projects would have taken forever and cost millions of dollars. This is quick, easy to run, and easy to consume, and we're real excited to be offering it now.
Right, and the footprint's very small within this, right? Again, it can be, you can use in terms of just on a desktop BI, Power BI, have it on the web, etc. But the capabilities are very strong, and you can add this, consume it very quickly, very easily, with a lot of capabilities.
Yeah. Well, we just have a couple minutes left. Are there any questions? Just to sort of recap here, this video will be posted. Our contact information is out there as well. I'll put up our little slide here. But this, again, we're real excited for this package. You can find us at scmconnections.com. My name is Mike Rafferty, and this is Pat Green, and we're kind of all over the place. We're at LinkedIn and YouTube, or some of our channels where you'll be able to see this video and share it with your friends and colleagues. again, you know, we're real excited about the value this adds, and hopefully you guys were able to see that as well. Kind of tap dancing to see if there's any questions, but I think we answered them all along the way. This is a great session, and we really appreciate everybody's interactivity. But yeah, anyway, this platform, the combination of IBP and the way we package it with Spark is something that, you know, we've always sort of dreamed of being able to do, and now we're able to see it. So, Pat, anything else as a parting shot to the group here?
Yep, thanks everyone for attending. It was, we appreciate your time.
Awesome. Thanks everybody. And again, we'll send out a recap. Love the participation and engagement, and enjoy the rest of your week. Thanks.